Meanwhile, in Cleveland, people are protesting after a grand jury decided not to bring charges against the two officers involved in the shooting death of 12-year-old Tamir Rice, a boy with a toy gun in a park. Tamir was shot less than 2 seconds after Officer Timothy Lohman jumped out of the police cruiser. The decision not to indict does not come as a surprise. Leading up to the grand jury's decision, the county prosecutor, Timothy McGinty, had been publicly releasing testimony that suggested the officers acted reasonably and justifiably in killing Tamir. Tamir's family says the prosecutor abused and manipulated the grand jury process. A Cleveland judge says the case should have been brought to a criminal trial jury, not a grand jury. So I'm joined now by attorney and former prosecutor Kenneth Montgomery in our New York studio. Kenneth, thank you so much for being here. You know, there's a lot of controversy surrounding these grand jury investigations, which seem to rarely, if ever, result in a police officer being indicted. In fact, in this case, prosecutor McGinty recommended that the grand jury not charge the officers before they even made their decision. Can you first explain to our viewers how grand jury investigations are conducted? I mean, are both sides fairly represented as they would be in court?
Absolutely not. Thank you for having me. Normally, the grand jury proceeding is a one-sided affair. It's basically the prosecutor presenting the evidence that they find fit to seek an indictment or a no true bill, meaning that they don't find an indictment. What's rare in these police cases is that normally, if every case was treated, every civilian was treated as some of these prosecutors are treating the police, then I think you would have a lot less indictments for your average citizen. What seems to be the pattern in a lot of these cases where police officers are accused is you have publicity, and then you have the prosecutors presenting favorable evidence on behalf of the police officers. And obviously, since it is a one-sided affair, I don't think most people understand the intimate relationship that a prosecutor has with a grand jury. Then you're getting the results that they've orchestrated.
So if the county prosecutor is bringing forth the majority, if not all of the information, and that county prosecutor is working closely in his or her job with the police department on a regular basis, aren't they more likely to give deference to law enforcement in these cases?
Well, I think that's proven. I think the police officers and the prosecutor's office all across this country work in a symbiotic relationship. Most prosecutor offices, they have bureaus that handle police corruption or when police officers commit crimes. Unfortunately, you still have this symbiotic relationship, but what they do, and there is no checks and balances, is that they present a defense for the police officers. And in this case, which seems to be highly inappropriate, they advise the jury to no true bill these police officers. And again, remember, we have a case with Tamir Rice where it was over a year for the presentation with all of these leaks with the press. And I think this result is an obvious result.
It certainly was. The information that we were being given leading up to this grand jury decision, when you read the information that was being put forth in front of the grand jury, you seemed to know months ahead of time what the outcome was going to be on Monday. But you know, some House Democrats they're pushing for a bill that would require states to use independent prosecutors for police shootings after, you know, such a string of cases like Tamir and Michael Brown have brought the issue certainly into the national spotlight. Now, the National Association of Police Organizations pushing back on this. They do not want independent prosecutors. But would this be a feasible solution to offering a little less bias?
I think on its face, it does, but I think when you really critically think about it, I don't think it's that much of a difference. You got to think, who's going to choose the independent prosecutors? The citizens aren't going to choose that. It's probably going to come from some other political office that has a partisan effect to it. It depends on what Republican is in charge, what Democrat is in charge. It still politicizes the issue. So I don't think that's necessarily the answer, to be quite honest with you. If you have a staunch Republican pro-police officer or Democratic person in office whose responsibility is to choose that independent prosecutor, I don't think in that circumstance you have a different outcome.
Okay, so back in August, California became the first state to ban secret grand juries in police shooting cases. I was mentioning earlier that there was a Cleveland judge that had already ruled in the Tamir case that there was probable cause to bring criminal charges, and he was hoping that it would be put forth in front of a criminal trial jury, not a grand jury. So is doing away with grand juries in police shooting cases the way to go?
It is, but unfortunately, the only other way it would work is if the prosecutor felt that they had enough evidence, but you know, for New York, let's think about it. In New York, unless you are indicted by a grand jury, the only other way you're going to face felony charges is through some Superior Court information where you actually have to against you. So depending on the jurisdiction, I don't know how that's going to work out. I think what's frustrating to individuals and some concerned citizens and a few politicians is the nature of police work and race in this country. We're attempting to try to figure out something that's for hundreds of years, that's in the fiber of this country, unfortunately, that I don't think can be addressed in a knee-jerk manner. I think this is going to take some time for this system to be totally evaluated.
Attorney and former prosecutor Kenneth Montgomery, really appreciate your insight. I'm sure we'll be speaking with you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.